Hello, this is Oleg Borisenko and Market Access Insider channel. In our programs, we discuss organization and financing of healthcare services and medical technologies in European countries. Today, we're in Milan, Italy, and we're going to speak to Andrea Zanella, the CEO of DIANAX and the expert on Italian in vitro diagnostic market. We're going to discuss the general organizational and financing framework for in vitro diagnostic tests in Italy, as well as the role of industry in market access activities. Hope you will enjoy the program. Andrea, thanks for joining us on this program.
It's a pleasure for me.
Can you start with a general overview of in vitro diagnostic market in Italy?
Yeah, for sure. In Italy, the in vitro diagnostic market is quite complex, I would say, because we are not talking about just one market, but we're talking about 21 regional markets. And they have rules and laws that are also different, and practices that are quite different from one region to the other. So we are thinking about something that is very, very localized.
All right. And how laboratories are organized? Are they public, private, based inside the hospital, outside the hospital?
Yeah, you know that we have a universal healthcare system in Italy. And in practice, the real healthcare system is a public one, but there is also a private part of the healthcare system that's also including the in vitro diagnostic activity, the lab activity. And most of the hospitals have their own lab, and they are practicing in vitro diagnostic activities inside the hospital. But there are also very region by region it differs, but there are many different in vitro diagnostic private labs that are working together with and in combination with the public hospitals.
And laboratories that are based in hospitals, are they mainly serving patients at hospital, or also they could serve GPs and
they normally do the inpatient hospital activity, but also outpatient hospital activity that are mostly related to the GPs that are sending the patients there to do diagnosis and to do examinations in order to be diagnosed later on.
All right. So Italy has a unique, benefit catalog, LIA catalog, which determines coverage of in vitro diagnostic services. Could you outline the role of LIA catalog?
Yeah, the LIA means level of activities that should be reimbursed by the national healthcare systems. There is a national one, but then there are regional lists of performances that can be done by the healthcare system on a private and on a public base. So every single region should have a very specific list of tests that should be reimbursed with different names and different rates.
And how common are these lists in relation to IVD tests across regions?
They are mostly the same. I would say 95%, 98% are exactly the same, but sometimes there are specific tests that are reimbursed in one region and not necessarily in the other region. Rates are slightly different region by region. Also with the DRG system, we are working in Italy with a DRG system. Also there are national DRGs, but also local and regional DRGs.
So what's the payment model for in vitro diagnostic tests that they perform during hospital stay?
What do you think about payment model?
For example, DRG or global budget or fee-for-service?
Oh, okay. Of course, the hospital has a specific budget for each activity, and they have to comply with the budget because of course the financial issues are always there. I would say that the hospitals are mostly doing their activity based on that, but also the private hospitals are also public and private labs are also doing budget-based activity, and they are negotiating each year with the healthcare system at regional level with what should be the budget for that.
And what's the payment model in ambulatory settings? So we know that there are some reimbursement lists.
There is a reimbursement list. Every single test should be reimbursed at a special rate. So and region by region it varies.
Yeah, but it also resembles more or less the situation in other European countries where at hospital level, it's global budget for laboratory, it's a global budget to DRG for hospital, and then fee-for-service model in outpatient settings.
Yeah.
So, and what's the typical process for introduction of novel tests into this reimbursement list, for example?
That's very, very important and relevant topic. Typically, the reimbursement of a new test that is novelty, because maybe of innovation, because maybe of the companies that are in the industry that is producing those type of tests are making an innovative test. Those tests should be proposed to the regional commission and the national commission, and there are experts in the regions that are devoted to make analysis and understanding exactly the technical part and the commercial part, of course, and the economical and financial part, and they are assigning at the end of the day the rate based on facts and on clinical practice that has been done, maybe on a pilot study. So there is HTA, health technology, that is working in that direction in order to guarantee that there is an economical value out of a new test that should be proposed for that. This is mostly valid for also imaging. So in that case, of course, the importance and the economical impact should be more relevant.
Yeah. But also, to our knowledge, in Italy, HTA for IVD tests is mainly limited to very expensive tests, something like oncological tests.
Normally, yes, but also in small tests where the budget, the overall budget should have a very big impact on the overall budget of the hospital. Also, in that case, HTA should be used and practiced.
Are there any specifics of reimbursement of companion diagnostic tests in Italy?
There is a sort of new way of doing that, meaning that there is a sort of risk-sharing system in Italy that is starting to really on a very preliminary base, meaning that for a sort of companion diagnostic test, they should be placed and used for treating patients in oncology mainly, with a preliminary reimbursement rate that should be later on reviewed and analyzed if the outcomes are positive or not. So sharing the risks of introducing new technologies into...
Is it somehow connected to reimbursement of pharmaceuticals, or is there...
It should be connected with that, yeah.
But
it varies region by region.
Region by region, okay. Because it's interesting, because in Italy there is a central decision-making authority for pharmaceuticals, AIFA. Yeah. So then, and for devices, it's different authorities. So it's interesting how this will be evolving.
Yeah, we believe that AIFA probably will also take responsibility in the future on medical device, because there is a big connection now between medical devices and in-vitro diagnostics as companion diagnostic for sure, and drugs. So there is a combination of factors that are probably pushing in that direction.
So there are typically two forces that are used for to drive introduction of novel tests. One is clinical community, another one is laboratory community. So in Italy, what are the key the driving community for introduction of novel tests?
I would say the clinical community will be absolutely the most important driver in that respect. Sure.
All right. And then laboratory, more or less to understand the feasibility.
Laboratory is a sort of a consultant of it. But clinicians are the more relevant drivers for that, the clinical community for sure.
All right. So again, evidence requirements for diagnostic tests are completely different versus medical devices, right? So typically randomized controlled trials are not performed, so it's diagnostic accuracy studies?
No, they are also performed, depending of course on the ethical implication of it. So if a test has an ethical implication that should be damaging for the patient, for sure, this is not the case. But in double tests that should be randomized in order to understand exactly, those should be done also for IVD.
But what are the typical evidence requirements for IVD tests in Italy? Is it only diagnostic accuracy, or again, clinical utility, also economics? So what is the contribution of this?
Both of them for sure. The accuracy and precision, when relevant, it's absolutely the driver number one, but also the economics should be very much important for that.
So another important concept in IVD field is point-of-care testing. So are there any specifics of reimbursement of funding of IVD tests?
There are some tests that are reimbursed on point-of-care with a special rate, not so many. It's an evolving situation. I'm working in this field, so I know quite well. Like in Europe, in some countries it's recognized, in some others it's not recognized. Most of the case, we use the same rates of the lab tests, in hospital lab tests, also for point-of-care. I think that in the future there will be an important and a very relevant studies that will recognize that point-of-care and the decentralization of hospital activities around going much better and much closer to the patient would have a big economical, but also societal and outcome impact in the healthcare in general. So point of care and point of need. Also the self-testing is something that will grow in the future. We call point of care something that should be done where the care is done. That should be a small hospital or the ambulatory or the GP office, the doctor's office. But we can go home and go in really where the need of diagnostics is. That should be also at home of the patient. And I think that decentralization will be absolutely a big driver for the next 5-10 years.
Reimbursement systems in most of the European countries are driven by the clinical community, by the hospital management and stakeholders in the system itself. So industry in general plays very limited role. So is there any formal role for industry in reimbursement processes in Italy?
I think we can play a very important role in the future because in the era of value-based medicine, value-based healthcare, I think that we need to really be companion of the system, of the overall system, in order to really make our contribution in the sense that we can propose not only innovation but also economical models that can be used for the overall healthcare system. So I think that we need to play a much more important role in the future. And it is starting.
Yeah. And what is the role of, and what is actually the job of market access professional in Italy?
For drugs, it's already done since many years. In the medical device industry, I think it's a starting type of activity, and the profile of market access people is initiating right now to be a relevant role in the industry. I think that for medical device, it's a little bit different than from drugs, and the stakeholders are also different. They are not exactly the same stakeholders, and so the impact on the healthcare it's slightly different from drugs. So the market access people should have experiences in a different way in respect to market access people that are talking about drugs and collaborating with regional or national payers and public policy officers in order to comply and to really do an important and an impactful role.
Industry associations play typically a big role in all the European countries, kind of acting as an important stakeholder. So what's the role of ASSOBIOMEDICA in
They play a very important role. Now ASSOBIOMEDICA is called Confindustria Dispositivi Medici, medical device Confindustria, so it's a big branch of the overall industry association, and is playing a pivotal role, I think. Very much important role, specifically in the market access with public policy activities toward the Ministry of Health, the ministries of health of the regions, and the overall public policy environment.
But also ASSOBIOMEDICA does a lot of research, right, to inform decision making.
Absolutely, yeah. Of course, ASSOBIOMEDICA, Confindustria Dispositivi Medici, is of course taking advantage of all the associates that are making their experience available for the entire community, and using that they are playing a big role and doing a lot of studies. Inside Confindustria Dispositivi Medici, there is a study group that is making a lot of market analysis and playing a big important role in positioning the industry view inside the healthcare system.
All right, excellent. Well, thank you very much, Andrea, for this interview. It was very insightful.
It has been a pleasure.
Thank you.
A lot.